by the way. Cons, you might, oops, you might miss the context. What else? Anything else? Sherry? Or anyone else?
No.
You might lose some important information. Oh, is it not typing? Important information. Anything else? No? Okay. Next reading type is reading. Oh my gosh. This is getting really annoying. Sorry, what's happening is, right? Students are joining late, and then as I'm typing, Zoom forces me to accept them into the class first before I can continue typing. I know you can't see it on your screen, but it's just coming up on mine. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So next is, oh my gosh. Can you guys hear the sound effect?
Yes.
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 So it's the next type is reading the questions first, then looking for the answers. The way this method works is you go to your passage here, and then you look at the question number one. The question number one says, why did Hashtabut alter her image? Sorry. So instead of reading the whole passage, what you do is you go through the passage to look for the answers to your questions. Now, what's a pro to this method?
Saves time.
Yeah.
You know
So,
what you're looking for?
save time. You know what you are looking for. Anything else? No. What's a con?
Sometimes you miss the answers. Context.
Yeah.
Miss out context.
Oh my dear. Information. Oh, this is so annoying. This my computer keeps forcing me to like accept these things to finish my sentence. Miss out information.
What's the app called?
This app, it's called Good Notes, but it's not like it's not something I'd recommend for you guys. The only reason I have it is because I can connect my iPad to it. So on the iPad, you know, sometimes when I draw, right, that way I can show it to you directly. Okay, miss out, not confrontation, context. Context. All right. Now, here's another con for reading the questions first. I don't think reading the questions first really saves you time because let's take a look at the first question. Why did Hashtag alter her image? To find the answer to that, you're reading this whole passage here. You keep reading, 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 reading until you get to this middle section here. Then the next question was, in what case it would be women substitute for men? Then you start again. You start reading from the start, and then you keep going, 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 and then you can find it here. So although you might know exactly where to look for, you still are you still are reading the whole passage essentially several times, right? For some people, like from me, I like this method a lot, but it doesn't always mean that you save time. It's longer. Okay, doesn't mean that it always save time. What's another final method that we went through in class?
Read the whole
Read through
passage.
the whole text.
Yeah, reading the whole passage first, right? What's a pro?
You get all the info.
You can remember parts of the text for that you need for the questions.
Empire. What else?
You get all the information, so you don't have to go back and try and find the question again. It's easier to just
Easier to just?
answer the question then.
Yep. Yeah. What's the con?
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
Time.
time consuming, right? Very time consuming. Anything else? Anything else?
You might be like, you might, when you're reading the whole thing, you have like more to remember. So like when you go back to the question,
Subhash's
the last one,
iPhone,
you
could you
might
please not
forget
draw on the
something
screen?
because you, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, Alfie, could you say that again? Alfie, can you come closer to the mic, Alfie, because I can't hear you. Tyrone, please stop drawing on the screen as well. Last warning for Tyrone and Subhash iPhone. I'll kick you guys out if you continue to do that.
so if you like read all of it, when you go
Yep.
back to do the questions,
Yeah.
you might like forget uh, what you read because you have like you read too much stuff, so you have to like go back and read all the important stuff you have to read when you're
Okay.
doing the answers.
Yeah. Really good. Now, all these three different question reading types, right? Now, it doesn't like there isn't a single reading type that is better for everyone, right? Each person might find a different reading type that's more useful to you. So for me, as I just said, reading the questions first is more useful to me. For Jenny and Henry, they said that reading the whole passage first is useful to them. And for Manny, skim reading is useful for him. What I recommend you for you guys, right? For each week that we do reading comprehension, we have 3 passages in the booklet. I'd recommend you guys to practice each of the different reading types and see which one helps you the most. Okay, between now and then, see which one is the best. What do you call it? Reading style for you, and that way, when you get to the gate test, you have a clear idea of what works best for you. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing I want to go through. Next thing I want to quickly go through. I think I'll draw it. That makes my explanations better. Um, Let me see if I can quickly join the Zoom class. Zoom. Join meeting. Does anyone have the Zoom meeting in front of them? Code?
Yes.
Okay.
807
I know it.
Alina, go.
807
Go for, okay, Shri, 1 second. 807
616
616
211.
2117.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Shri and Gayatri.
807-616-2117.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right. Thank you so much, Alfie. Thank you, Shri, and thanks, Gayatri. Okay. All right. Let me see if I need to stop screen sharing. Okay. Perfect. You guys can see my screen now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Next thing I want to go through, I think for some of the students, we already went through this in class, but I'll go through it with everyone today, right? And what I want to go through is quickly the concepts of, maximizing your results with the least amount of work you put in, okay? So to understand what that means, right? Hello?
Could you go back to the page with what's it called? The right for English writing.
This?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I need us to write that down.
Okay. So, what I want to go through now, right, is I want to go to the concept of, maximizing your results with the minimal amount of effort you can. Now, to explain how that works, I want you guys to think about this. We already went through this example in class, but does anyone remember? Oh, yeah, the example was, can anyone tell me if, let's just say all of you, everyone here are doctors, okay? You guys are all doctors, and you have a patient He's just come in and this patient has a problem, right? This patient has chronic blood pressure. There is really high blood pressure. He's got really high, big problems with diabetes and like cholesterol and all those sort of things, right? And the one thing you notice is that this person is extremely fat, okay? Like really, really fat. What's the best thing that this person can do to really improve his health? Just send it
Stop eating sugar.
in the chat.
Exercise.
Send it in the chat.
Go on a diet.
Yep, so I just said it, send it in the chat. Okay, so I'm getting some good answers. Go on a diet by Alina. Thank you, Alina. Thanks, Darsh. Thanks, Gayatri. Good job, Abir. Thanks, Naman. All right, a lot of people are saying that this person needs to lose weight. Right. Now, with losing weight, what's the best thing this person can do? What's the number one thing that the person can do to lose weight?
Lower calorie intake.
In the chat.
First is diet.
In the chat.
Oh.
Sherry, please mute yourself. Alfie, please mute yourself. Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Alfie. Okay, awesome. So diet, perfect. The best thing that this person can do is diet, right? But he could do so many other things. So in the chats itself, there's so many other options that you guys have said, such as exercising, such as sleeping, such as not eating junk food, getting protein powder, and things like that, right? So there's so many options, but the best thing that this person can do is to go on a diet and eat healthy, clean food, correct? That's the most important thing that this person can do. Now, all of you guys, your main goal is to get into GATE. Now, what's the best thing you guys can do to get into GATE? Now, I went through this in class as an example. Oh, wait, is my pen working?
Come to Loyola.
One sec, 1 minute. Oh, my pen's not connecting. Why is my pen not connecting? Oh, it's connecting, perfect. Yeah. So if I were to do a triangle, the best thing you guys, okay, every year, about 6,000 students apply for GATE. Out of 6,000 students, about 12 to 15% get into a GATE school. Out of them, about 5% get into Personal. Now, the best thing you guys can do, so last year we had about 40 students get into GATE from Loyola. So just by coming to Loyola, your chances of getting in go from 12 to 15 to 40%. So by coming to the classes, by the way, not just coming to the classes, anyone can come to classes, right? But by doing your homework, right? Doing your homework and listening to the teacher, that improves your chances all the way, Loyola. I forgot to spell my own company's name, to 40%. Next best thing you guys can do. Can anyone tell me?
Take notes.
Take notes. Take notes.
Daddy. No.
Take notes. Okay. Now, with these notes, let me rub that out. Oh, what? This is so annoying. Good. Notes, right. I don't think I went to class with, I went through this in class, but basically all of you, let's just say this is a average student, let's call him Melvin. Now Melvin here wants to get into GATE, right? What Melvin should do is he should have 2 notebooks at his house, notebook 1 and notebook 2. Oh, oops, 2. Let me write 2 better. 2.
Melvin, you spelled Loyola wrong.
Yeah, I noticed that earlier as well. And then I tried to do it again and then I messed it up again. So I was like, oh, whatever. My brain's just acting a bit strange. Okay.
Loyola.
Yeah, I did that earlier and then I rubbed it out if you noticed it. And then I drew it again. And then I did Loyola again. All right. Notebook number 1, right? Your notebook number 1 should be your scrap notebook, right?
Yeah.
This is your useless notebook. If you lose this notebook, if it goes in a fire or if your dog eats this notebook, it doesn't matter, right? This notebook is useless. You don't care about this notebook. Notebook number 2, though, is your actual notes notebook. So every day you come to class and then you take notes in notebook number 1, right? This is where you take your notes, and anything you do learn in class, you write it in here. But once you get home, you'll transfer kind of like a cloud. You know how you back up things to the cloud from your iPad to the cloud or whatever? You back up all the important information from notebook number 1 to notebook number 2. That way, this notebook has all the best notes from your classes. Because in the class, you might learn lots of different things. You might write down lots of different things, but you don't need to know all of those different things. Some of you might write down, for example, the narrative structure. If you come to our classes last term, you might have written that down twice, but you don't need it twice. This good notebook will have all the important information that you have, okay? By doing this method, let's just say you lose notebook number 1, right? It doesn't matter because notebook number 2 will have all the good notes in it. That way, in 6 months' time, right? Melvin, like 6 months later, 6 months later, when Melvin's going to do the gate test, he can throw away this notebook. And all Melvin's going to do is read notebook number 2. And when he opens notebook number 2, it has all the different important information that he needs. So for example, it's got 2 rules to do algebra. It's got it's got the narrative structure. It's got the writing marking key. It's got how to do volume, how to do capacity, what nets are, right? So all the good notes will be in notebook number 2. This notebook number 2 stays in your house, and then you do not give it away, or you do not, I don't know, take it out of your house.
Wait, Melvin, what's the
Yeah,
point of a notebook when you can't have it during the test?
because it's for you to revise. So in 6 months' time, Naman, I'll give you an example. Actually, I just use my own example of my own uni notes. Let me see if I can show. Oh, well, can I show it to here? All right, perfect. Do I have Notion in this? Yeah. So I have a notebook for uni, right? Oh, does it let me log in? Log in. Back to my content. All right. So this is my notes for my degree for last semester. Now, this is a subject that I studied, right? Now, let's take a look at this. This is where I put all my different notes, okay? And in this, let's just say if I were to open a random one, there's so much info. Oh, this is what easy subject. Let me just go to the first lecture then. It's got so much information, right? Each of them individually has heaps and heaps of information. So what do I do? There's no way, it's not really easy, nice notes. So what do? This is my notebook number 1, where I have all my scrap information, right? I then go home and then transfer them into my good notebook. Let me see if I have it here. Oh, that one. University, international finance. There you go. So I transfer them all into this, where I have all the important notes in one page. So when I look at this, the International Monetary System, fixed rate regime, what is it? So it tells me that a fixed rate regime is when you back the US dollar with gold. When I want to study about the euro and the European Union, it tells me it's when you compare euro to the dollar. Then the currency crisis. What's a currency crisis? It's when the Mexico and the Asian currencies lost its value. I'll look at the Chinese RMB. What's that? It's when China uses its currency to devalue to increase their power. Then I want to look at the effect of the currency in the economy. So I have a nice little graph which shows me how currency affects supply and demand. So this is my notebook number 2, where I make it pretty and nice so that later when I have the exam, I don't have to look at this boring old, huge page of notes. I can look at this really nice, concise set of notes. Do you guys understand?
Melvin,
Yeah.
what do you prefer to do it digitally or on paper?
For me, I like it digitally, but you guys don't have a choice.
So what
Oh,
action?
Actually, for your notebook number 2, you can do it digitally, but I'm talking about notebook number 1. You have to do it in scrap, right? You have to do it physically. For me, I can
Okay.
do, I have a choice because in uni you can bring your laptops and stuff. So I prefer to do it digitally.
What kind of app should we do for like note number 2? Notes number.
So you can have any, just use the free apps, right? Good Notes is a paid app. You don't need to get that. There's heaps of free apps. So there's OneNote that's free. OneNote, oops, not OneNotes. OneNote that's free. Word
What?
documents, Word, Microsoft Word.
Pages.
Notion,
Note.
the one I was using. The Notes
Google
app,
Docs.
the Notes app, yeah, Google Docs.
Pages.
Pages, awesome. So you guys already know it. You guys know more.
Melvin?
Yeah.
Can you scroll up to the pyramid thing?
Yeah. So I'll come back to that. So there you go. So now that you guys have, these are the different note taking apps that you guys can use. So basically, do you guys understand the concept of the 2 notebooks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's a second benefit.
Yeah.
The second benefit of using a second notebook, right, is that when you transfer your notes, you have to actively look at all the information and decide what's most important. And when you guys do that, your brain will remember, like, will be revising this concept again. So you're more likely to remember the information. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
Melvin.
Perfect. All right. Next on the
Melvin.
list. Yeah.
So, do you recommend next time we come to class to have a second notebook?
No, keep that with you at your home. So that notebook does not leave your house because you don't want to lose it, do you?
No.
Exactly. So keep it with you. At home, just the first notebook, that's where you have scraps. But even with scraps, right, make sure you take down clean notes because if you don't know what you've written down, then you won't be able to transfer it easily. Okay. All right. The next best thing I'd recommend is reading. So you read as many books as you can.
Khan Academy.
Reading. Yeah.
My dad says I read too many books.
Who's your dad?
My dad,
Yes, but what's your dad's name, sir?
George.
George. Well, tell Mr. George that Melvin told Mr. George that it's good to read books, okay?
Okay.
What's your name?
Gabrielle.
Oh, I thought your dad's name was Martin.
Yeah, his real name is George, but everyone calls him Martin.
Ah, okay. Okay, Khan Academy is really good. And then the other thing I'd recommend also is a mistakes notebook. Now, you don't need to get a special notebook for the mistakes one as well. But the way the mistakes notebook works is, remember your notebook number 2. If it's a physical notebook, you can go to the very back of it. And then what you do is you write down question number 1, why you got, and then you do, for example, it's like this. Term 3, and then you do week 2, question number 1. And then you write down what question type it is. So it's an algebra question type. And then why did you get it wrong? You'd say, I got it wrong. 1 second, I'm speaking. Because I didn't read the question. If you do this, right, the benefit is you'll start to see a pattern of why you get certain questions wrong, right? There's usually a specific like pattern that people make mistakes again and again and again, right? For example, do you guys know, I think there's some of you here who's really into coding, like Sean and stuff, who's really into computers. Did you guys know that coders like each coder will make the same type of mistakes again? And it's so obvious that there's special like detectives and investigators that they can find out who hacked or who made a code by just looking at the mistakes in a code, right? It's like your fingerprint or it's like your handwriting.
Cool.
Because humans make the same mistakes again and again and again.
Exactly.
So by having a mistakes notebook, you see a pattern within your mistakes. You start to realize, for example, for me, a huge mistake that I made in year 7, 8, and 9 in my maths questions was that I always forgot to put units in, right? So the question might be, what's the area? I would say 40, and that's it. So I wouldn't say 40 centimeters squared. And because of that, I'd lose 1 mark. So by having a mistakes notebook, you know exactly what type of mistakes you make again. Now, I don't have it on this computer, but if I can find it later, I had a mistakes notebook in year 12. So in year 12, I had a mistakes notebook for my maths subjects. And also, do you guys know what the medical entrance test is?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. So
No.
if you want to get into medicine, right? If you want to get into medicine, there's this test you have to do. It's very similar to GATE because it's written by the same company. So when I was doing that test as well, every time I get a question wrong, I'll screenshot it and then I'll write down why I got those questions wrong. Actually, I think I did that for this semester for uni as well. Pretty sure I did it for uni. Let me see if I can find it. Corporate finance. Oh, perfect. I can find it. So this subject, right? I would get a question wrong. So I'd write down the answer key, the steps in a whole set. So these are the questions that I got wrong for these questions. So for example, this question was asking about when you get a loan for a bank, how do you calculate like the value of the bank or something, or I don't know, the present value of the loan payments, or if you have a like a lease payments, or these are different like business things you have to learn about, you know, when you're running a business, like when you're like running a bank or a big business and stuff. So these are all the different question types that I would get wrong. So look at this question. So this question I got it wrong. So I wrote down, I pretty much screenshotted the exact question. So I know exactly which questions I'm getting wrong. And what I realized was that for this unit, my biggest issue was I could not like I kept on making the same mistakes about understanding which type of loans they're talking about, because there are different types of loans and each type of loans have different calculations that you have to do. So that's the mistake I made. So for example, this unit, there's you have to value, like for example, a company, right? If you have to find the value of a company, how much a company is worth. So for example, this company called Goodyear, you have to figure out how much they're worth, but then you use a different formula if the company uses, if the company has debt or if they have a loan versus if they don't have a loan. So I kept on making those mistakes. So I took screenshots of that. By having a mistakes notebook, you'll start to see patterns and then you'll less likely to make those mistakes. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
By the way, one thing I want you guys to understand is that everything that I'm suggesting to you, right, is things that I have done personally for me. That's why I wanted to show you guys personal examples. Like this is literally a few weeks ago for my semester 1, year 3. So this is my 3rd year of studying finance. So this is my first semester, so last semester, and these are the subjects that I did. So the mistakes notebook I just showed you guys. I also showed you guys my second notebook where I take good notes. These are just examples. Like everything that I'm telling you, it's things that I've tried myself. So it's really useful stuff.
Melvin,
Yeah,
can you go back to like the reading methods?
yeah. Just take a screenshot.
Oh, okay.
Melvin, what about the tip of the triangle?
Yeah, I'm going to come to that. All right. So the last thing, once you've done everything, once you have done all these different things, the last thing you should be doing is extra questions. A lot of your parents, they come to me and they say, like, they go from doing the tuition questions and they jump straight from the homework questions to extra questions. They're always saying, okay, I know this is like annoying for you guys as well. They always come and say, oh, my son Melvin is always sitting home, playing games and watching TV. He has nothing to do. Melvin, give me some extra questions. There's no point in you guys going from straight just doing your homework to do extra questions if you don't have good set of notes, and if you don't have, if you haven't been reading, if you don't have a mistakes notebook, and if you haven't done Khan Academy, right? For example, let's just say we're learning algebra. There's no point of you practicing algebra in our classes and going straight to more algebra questions if you don't fully understand algebra. So what should you do? You should check your notes. Check your notes to see if you fully understand algebra. If you don't have good notes, make a good notes. That helps you practice. Then try it out on Khan Academy. Khan Academy will also go through the same concepts with you. The thing is with you guys is this is your year 5 syllabus, right? I think I went through this last class. This is a year 5 syllabus. There's no way for us tutors to cover the entire year 5 syllabus in such detail for you guys with 1 hour every 2 weeks, right? We get pretty much essentially 30 minutes a week with you guys to teach you the entire year syllabus, right? But your school gets pretty much, I think, around 5 hours a week doing it. And that therefore our job is mostly to teach you as fast as we can the most important information. Then obviously you can do things like Khan Academy to really, really understand those concepts. You understand?
Can you show us the notes so we can screenshot it?
Which notes?
The other one, so that we can practice them.
Which one? Which
Scroll
one?
up. Show us the triangle.
Sorry? Who's
The
speaking?
triangle.
Oh, yeah, this one here. This one here, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to screenshot it?
Okay, I did it.
Perfect.
Melvin,
Could you please go to like the pages word whatever you wrote, yeah?
Wait, Melvin,
Yeah.
what happens if you actually done everything? You've got your notebook and everything, but you still don't have enough work to do.
Oh, then you go to extra questions. That's what's at the top of the iceberg. What I'm saying is you shouldn't skip it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Wait,
And-
can you give extra questions?
If you want to, I can get you extra questions. Yeah.
Okay.
can you go back to the
By the way,
triangle?
they wouldn't be perfect questions, Naman, because obviously, they would be just.
Yeah, I
extra
get that. I
questions.
just want some questions.
Then I can definitely give you extra questions.
Melvin,
Yeah.
can I screenshot the top?
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
for it.
Melvin,
Yeah.
do we
Done.
for our good notes, do we put our mock exam like in our mistake book?
Yeah, of course, because those are still questions that you're studying, right? So definitely you should put mock exams in there as well. Good question.
Do we put our mistakes notebooks in our scrap one or our good one?
Sorry, Abdul, could you say that again?
We put our mistakes notebook in our first
one?
one, so the scrap one or the clean one.
Ooh. So essentially your mistakes notebook, the main benefit of it is for you to go back and see a pattern as to your mistakes. So even if you lose it, it's not a big deal, but it'd be really good if you could keep it in your good notes. The reason is, it helps you. Let's just say you're doing a question later on, right? Let's just say you're doing a question in term 4 and you've seen a similar question pop up before and you made a mistake on it. By having your good notes, you can look back and say, oh, that's the steps to do this question correctly, and then you can practice it again. Okay.
Melvin, could you scroll down?
Yeah.
Nice stick
Wait,
man.
Melvin, what are you gonna talk about next?
All right. So that's pretty much it. Like most of the things that wanted to cover, that's pretty much it. If you guys have, one more thing I wanted to go talk about. One more thing I wanted to talk about.
What is it? Nice stick man. You're so skinny, Melvin.
Thank you.
By the way, what's our homework?
Sorry.
Melvin, what's our homework?
Oh, you have to do week 4 of maths. 1 second. Let me just open up.
What the hell?
Language, please. Thank you. Right.
This week's homework is 1 page, right?
Sorry. Yes.
This
it
week's
is.
homework is 1 page, right?
Yes, it is.
How do you?
Okay. 1 second. Let me just try to open up. I'm just trying to open up. How to do it here.
Melvin.
Screen sharing. Not screen sharing.
Melvin,
Yes, that's my name.
can you go through the questions after?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I
Not all the questions. I'll try to go through some of them. Okay, so week 3 of reading comprehension. I want to talk to you guys about this. Okay. Drawing. Okay, perfect. I have access to drawing. Okay. So let's take a look at question number. Okay, question number 2. It's something that a lot of you guys have had an issue with. Now, I want to talk to you guys about reading comprehension specifically, and I want to talk about how you should be approaching reading comprehension. I think Abir said it really well. Abir. Okay, before I go to Abir, let me just talk about reading comprehension first. So reading comprehension this term, all these questions were written by Maria. And the way Maria wrote this is that I gave her information from our last year students who told us what type of reading comprehension questions came up. And then with that information and also the sample test released by the GAE, we wrote all new questions this term. So all these questions were written by Maria for this term, completely new questions, right? And they're really good questions, like extremely, by far, I think these are the best reading comprehension questions that we've ever given to our students. So you guys are extremely lucky. But the hard part is these are very similar to the GATE test. And similar to the GATE test, and because of that, what you'll notice is that a lot of the answers they all seem correct. So for question number 1, it's you could argue that A is correct. A makes sense. B is also correct. C is also correct. Because when you look at the answers, it says Hashtaput wanted to get a male's body because she wanted to appear as a typical pharaoh. So that makes sense for A. Then it says others would question her actions. That makes sense for B. And she wanted a defense. That makes sense for C. How do you choose the right answer? So that's where you have to use logic and a great deal of thought to figure out which is the most correct answer for this context, right? So when you read this passage, it says, let me highlight it. Okay. Hashtaput goes to a great deal of trouble to appear like a typical pharaoh, even changing her appearance so that her formal images now show her with a stereotyped male body down to the false beard. Ashtapur realized that others would question her actions and was carving her defense in stone. Okay, so to answer this question, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that you have to think about the context. What happened? Why did Hashtapur want to look like a guy? Here's the thing. There were queens before Hashtaput who were able to be kings, and they did not have to do any of these extra measures, right? What was different about Hashtaput was that she took power from her stepson, right? So because of that, she knew that people, either her own people or the people of Egypt, or people later on down history, would question why did she become king, right? Now, I also want you to think about this. As a king, how often do the normal people get to see the king? Like
Really?
who is the king of Australia?
Scott Morrison.
Yeah, Scott Morrison, right? He's a leader.
Scott Morrison.
How many people here have seen Scott Morrison in person?
Seen
Hardly no one, right? I mean, maybe one of you might have seen him on like a trip to Canberra, but other than that, none of you here have seen Scott Morrison in person. But we've all seen him through newspapers and the internet, things like that. But back in the day, these people did not have newspapers and things like that, right? So the people of Egypt would have only seen her through the formal images released by the king to the people, right? So if the king released a seal or the king made a poster, that's the only way they would see the king, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, she was trying to make people believe that, she was the real good king, like she was the actual person, by making her formal images look like a king. So C covers so sorry, B already covers C. So C is not the right answer. And A, if I'm comparing A to B seems more correct because it's covering both B and C. And it's talking about, like, if you just want to be seen as a king, I don't know, like, it's only like one line which says that she wants to be seen as a king. And she didn't have to draw things on her face to be seen as a king. She was doing it so that, like, later on people would not really question her and what she was doing. But a better question for that is question number 2. Question number 2. Let me. I have to move it here. Sorry. Does the text suggest that women were seen as less worthy to rule? Okay. So let's look for evidence in the passage. Now, this question, I think Naman really loves this question. So I'm going to use red and green. Red saying that people saw that women were less worthy to rule, and green, women were equal to men. So legally, there's no prohibition on women ruling in Egypt. So that's one evidence saying that they're equal. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to highlight it. Galaxy tab A, please stop drawing on the screen. I'll put you in the waiting room. And I'll put you back in once you understand that this is not a whiteboard for you to draw on. We have a class going on.
Melvin.
Okay. So we have one bit of evidence for the prohibition of women ruling in Egypt. So what this means is that there's no rule saying that women can't rule in Egypt, right? So that is an evidence saying that they might be equal. But then it says that the ideal pharaoh was male. So you'd have to highlight it in red. So maybe it's saying that women and men were better than women. Then it says that the ideal pharaoh was male, handsome, athletic, brave, pious, and wise. All things that describe me, right? Okay, bad joke, bad joke. All right. Okay. Next, but it was recognized that occasionally a woman might need to preserve the dynastic line. So then again, more evidence saying that it was equal. When Sobeknefer ruled at the end of a troubled 12th dynasty, she was applauded as a national heroine. Another evidence saying that women were seen as equals. Mothers were deputized for their infant sons. Another evidence. And queens were substituted for their husbands absent on the battlefield. Another bit of evidence. So overall, there's more evidence suggesting that men and women were seen as equals rather than women being less worthy. But the evidence is still weak. It's not saying explicitly that men and women are equal. It's saying that in the case that there's no male to rule, they can let a woman rule. That doesn't sound very equal to me, does it?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
But let's take a look at the answers. Now that we've seen the evidence, let's take a look at the answers. Okay. 1. Does the text suggest women were seen less worthy to rule? Yes, they were seen as just substitutes and were given less respect. No, I don't think that is correct because Ashtaput was given a lot of respect. When she died, they put her in the Valley of the Kings when she died. So I don't think that they're given less respect. No, they are seen as equals because the text describes both men and women as the same. Incorrect. The text never says that. See? Yes, female kings would be cursed to an endless death if they ruled. No. When Soben Kunfru, this lady here, right, and ruled, He was seen as a great national hero. So it doesn't mean that they're cursed to an endless death. And finally, no, the text doesn't explicitly discuss a woman's worth in Egypt. Yes, I think that's true. They were not, we don't know yet, right? It doesn't explicitly say whether women or men were better. But if I'm being honest, I think the ancient Egyptians saw that they're less worthy, but it doesn't say explicitly. So I think this is the most correct answer. Most correct answer. So if I were to choose it, I'll choose B. Do you guys understand?
Yeah.
So when you are doing your reading comprehension, do the questions in a way that you look for evidence to back up your answers. Okay.
Wait, Melvin, is that all you wanted to cover in the reading?
Yes.
Okay, then can I just ask you a quick question about the maths?
For next week.
I just like, can you give an example on how to solve these types of questions?
Which types of questions? Maths
The
questions.
types of questions for this week's maths homework.
All right.
Because I'm kind of stuck on them.
Okay. I'll try to do the first one and then that's it. I won't do anything else. Okay.
Yeah, only the first one, because like, yeah, just an example.
Okay.
Because they all kind of follow the same steps.
Okay. 3 houses are available on a street. 3 people apply for houses. Each applies for one house without consulting the others. The probability that all 3 apply for the same house is what? So how many houses are there? Oh, it doesn't say. 3 houses. Oh, there's 3 houses available in the street. So 1, 1, 2, 3, and then each person applies for a house without consulting the other. What's the probability of? So the first person applying for house A is 1 out of 3. The second person applying for the first house is 1 out of 3. And the third person applying for the first house is 1 out of 3. So you multiply all of them, and then you get 1 out of 27, I think, should be. 3 people apply for 27.
That's what I did, but it was wrong.
Can I double check with you guys? If there's actually an error, sorry, all the questions were written separately. I'll just double check with the person who wrote the questions.
No, number 1's right. There's no error.
What's the answer? What did you put?
I got 1/9.
Me too.
How did you get 1/9?
Yeah.
Because it's 3 for the top and 27 for the bottom, and then you simplify, which is 1/9.
3 for the top.
But how'd you get 3 for the top?
Oh, wait. No. Okay, so okay.
Aren't you supposed to add it?
I'm pretty sure, by the way, I'll have to double check with the person. I'm pretty sure the logic is this. The way it works is the first person, right? The house that the first person chooses doesn't matter because let's just say he chooses A, B, or C, right? I don't know why I chose 2 there. It doesn't matter which house he chooses. It doesn't matter for the first one because the next 2 just have to choose the same house. So the first person has a 3 out of 3 chance of choosing any house that he likes. But so 3 out of 3 is the same as 1 out of 1. But the next 2 people have to choose the same house. And that's why it's times 1 out of 3 times 1 out of 3. And that's why it's 1 out of 9. Do you guys understand?
Yeah.
So for example, let's just say me, Naman, and Gayatri, we're all trying to pick the same, I don't know, same chocolate on the favorites box, right? The first person, we don't know which house that we all have to pick the same, right? So the first person will be the deciding person. So for them, their probability is pretty much 100% because it doesn't matter which house they pick. So that's why the first one is 1 out of 1. And the next 2 person will have to choose the same one. So that's why it's 1 out of 3 and 1 out of 3. All right. I'll just double check. Yeah.
Melvin?
Yeah.
So basically the logic is that you just multiply it by the chance there is by 1/1? Kind of?
No. So, okay. So in probability, we'll go through it again in class. So each week we'll go through the teaching concepts. So we'll go through how probability works. But I'm pretty sure we went through this last term. I think it was this girl. Oh, Eiffel is Eiffel in this class today? Okay, if she's not, I took photos of her notes, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing this in her notes. We went through probability last term, and in probability, there's and or, right? So when you see the word and, you multiply, and when you see the word or, you add. I think that's how it goes. Sorry, it's Sunday afternoon. I'm a bit low. Oh, Abdul, do you have it?
Oh, good.
Okay. So in this
Okay.
case, right? In this case, one second. In this case, um, the like they could go in any order they like. So the first person, because their choice will be the deciding factor for the later houses, that's why it's 100%. Do you get it?
Yes.
I have the notes. Yeah.
Okay.
So Melvin, basically it's 1/1 times the
120.
whatever number of people and the chance they get of getting the same one.
Possibly. I don't know. You'll find out next week in class.
Melvin,
Yep.
I think there's an error in
Question 7.
the one with like the marbles.
Which one is that?
Wait, let me check. Yeah, question 7.
Question 7? Yeah. I'll double check that. And then, so Mary's going to start the class soon. I'll double check all the questions. I'll do all the questions right now while Mary's going through it. And then if there's any issues, I'll text you guys in this chat, or I'll send a message on WhatsApp.
Melvin, the
Yeah.
problem.
Whoa.
Wait, for the rest of you guys who don't have a question, you can go for a break, come back at 6:01.
Melvin, so
Yeah.
what you did is that you actually put 1/12 twice. And I think one of them should have been 6/1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
Melvin,
that makes sense. Yeah.
you know the Microsoft Forms thing?
Yes, what about it?
Are you still doing that? Like online
No,
questions?
yes, I am. But these questions, they're not made by me. So again, I told you, this term, we've hired people to make all the questions. So that's why, for example, let me show you. Maria was helping me make the reading comprehension questions based off the gate things. Another guy was making the generability questions based off the gate test last year, and same as the math. But the math was based off the year 5 curriculum.
I also have another question.
Yes, free.
You know that rule you made last term, after 5 you can't come?
Sorry?
That rule you made last term, after 5:30 you can't come.
Sorry, after what?
5:30 you can't come.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Are you still doing that rule?
No. Basically, what that means, Sri, is that as you noticed today, right? You know, when I was typing the notes, did you see
Yeah.
how like my computer kept on like spamming? It made that sound.
Yeah.
What happens is, in the middle of class, while other people join while I'm still teaching, it freezes my screen until I let that person into the chat class. So that's why in the future, like basically after a few minutes, I usually just like ignore it. I bring it to the side, and then I just continue the work.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Pav and Nilambari. Just send your questions in the chat if you have questions. Yes, you can go on your break now. Well, actually, you can't because the class is about to start. So I'll hand it off to Maria now.
I've already started.
Yep.
At the 5.
Hi.
Hey, Maria, can you hear us?
All right. Yep, I can hear you. Sorry, I was just on mute. Okay. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. All right. So we start at 6:01, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. I am just going to connect my iPad so that we can
Actually,
look
Maria,
at that today. Yeah.
I'll insert chat, sending it as a message. Basically, the end of the lesson, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be leaving now, but since you're the
Okay.
host, when you finish the lesson today, could you, instead of leaving the chat, just end, sorry, click end meeting.
End meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, I can definitely do that.
The recording will exactly finish at the end of your class, so that when students watch it, it's exactly to where you finish off.
Right, okay. Okay, yeah. So it's leave the meeting then, not end. Which one was it, sorry?
No, it's end the meeting, not leave. So if you end the meeting,
End the meeting, yeah.
For everyone.
I was going to ask you about that because I was, you know how you were recording it last week. I wanted to know what was happening with that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so it just records. The thing is, last week, I think you left and then it made me host, but then because my laptop was still on, it kept on recording. So that
okay, so I will just end it then instead of anything else. Yep, all good with that. Yep.
All right, I'll see you guys next week.
Bye, Melvin.
Bye.
Bye, Melvin.
Bye.
Bye, Melvin.
All right, guys, how are we doing?
Bye.
See you later, later.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so today I'm going to be using my iPad so that there is absolutely no confusion with anything. We're just going to be changing the structure of the lesson just a little bit.
Maria?
Yes?
Is your screen sharing thing on? Because I can't see you.
I'm not sharing my screen yet, so you're going to give me a second, okay?
Oh, okay.
Do you need any help, by the way, connecting the iPad?
Yeah, I do. So actually, the link isn't actually working for the iPad. I'm trying to write it in. It's not.
Oh,
so give me 2 seconds.
Have you opened the iPad, sorry, the Zoom application on the iPad?
Yeah, I'm just doing it now. It started to work. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. One second. Oh, finally. Okay. Fantastic.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
So Maria, when you join,
That's echoing.
Oh, yeah, you did mention that, didn't you?
Yeah, so just what I recommend is keeping the what do you call it, the settings on the audio and pressing leave iPad audio or leave computer audio.
All right, yeah.
Perfect.
Yep, so sorry, give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think there was anything. Any sound? Nothing? Are we good?
We're good.
Awesome.
Good to go.
Are people here?
Good to go.
Yes, success. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, can everybody see that clearly? Are we all good?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to start the lesson now. Thank you all for being so patient with me. All right, so a couple of things before we start. I noticed that a lot of people had questions about things that were unrelated to the lesson last week. So what I would like to do is, if you have any questions, which I'm always happy to answer, I'd prefer if you jot them down and wait till the last 5 minutes of class and whack them in the chat for me, and then I'll be able to answer them. That way that we can stay on track with what we're going to learn, and I can just keep feeding you as much as I can so we can maximize the most out of our lessons, okay? So today we're going to be starting off with syntax. Now, obviously the definition is right there, but syntax, just very quickly, is the arrangement of words within a sentence, okay? And why that's important and why I'm bringing this up is because I've noticed when I'm reading a lot of creative stories, a lot of people are starting their sentences off the exact same way. So let's say you're writing in first person point of view. What a lot of people are doing is every single sentence begins with I. Now, one of my pet peeves is when a sentence begins the same way over and over, because it tells me that you haven't really thought through your plot. You haven't really thought through how you're going to make it interesting. Okay. So, and it also affects your readability. Okay. You want to be able to allow your audience to engage. And if your sentences are boring and they start the same way, it's really going to impede on that. So I'm going to give you a couple of ways we can work on our syntax, but my biggest tip when it comes to syntax and focusing on syntax is practice. You have to practice writing. You have to practice experimenting with your sentences. A couple of things that we can do to do that is we can focus on not using a passive voice when we write. And we can look at the clauses that sentences have within them. Now, I will go into detail on what clauses, conjunctions, and sentence types are, so don't freak out about that. It's very simple, and I want this to be very quick because it is just a little thing that I've noticed recently. Okay, so moving on. Very quickly, a clause, sorry, and we're not talking about Santa Claus in this case. I'm not trying to be funny. It has been mistaken before. It is C-L-A-U-S-E, clause. What it is just the point or the main idea of a section of your writing, and the section of your writing is your actual sentence, okay? So an independent clause is the main part of our sentence. And independent clauses can stand alone. What we tend to do is we tend to use a lot of independent clauses when we're writing. So because of this, it is really affecting the types of sentences in our creative writing. It means that there are a lot of very, very simple sentences in our creative writing, okay? So when we have independent, like too many independent clauses, that means that simple sentences have been overused, okay? What we want to be doing is having a variety of sentence types within our creative writing, okay? So somebody did just ask me about dependent clauses. So why I only mentioned independent clauses and because it's the fact that they stand alone, okay? You cannot have a sentence that is composed of just dependent clauses. Dependent clauses are incomplete sentences. If you feel like you're reading your story out loud and your sentence sounds incomplete, it is most likely because you've been using a dependent clause. This brings up my next point. You should be wanting to read your sentences out loud to make sure that they are complete. A lot of people, when they're in a rush and a time crunch, they will leave sentences incomplete. And that is quite possibly the worst thing you can do, especially when you have such good things to write, okay? So yes, you want to have an understanding of your independent and your dependent clauses, because that is going to help you improve your syntax and stop you from writing the same way over and over and over again. All right. Kanchi, you have a question? Kanchi? No? Nibuno? I'm going to stop after each part, and I want to go through it to make sure that we're good with it, okay? So Nibuno, what's your question?
Can dependent clauses be called subordinate clauses?
Yes, they can, but I would prefer if you kept it independent and dependent so you do not get confused, because you can also have subordinates within sentences, which is something completely different, okay?
Okay.
Shri?
I accidentally put my hand up.
Okay, fantastic. And these are all questions to do with clauses, right? Okay.
Maria, I have one question.
Yeah.
Do we write some of the main facts that we need to know on?
So what I would like you to do is just write down the things that you feel like you don't already know. I'm just going to try and run through this very quickly because if I'm being completely honest, you don't need to know what the definition of independent and dependent clause is, but I do need you to understand that that you have to be conscious of them when you are writing, because if you are not conscious of them, it will affect the flow of your overall story, okay?
Maria,
Yes?
do you have the question papers for week 3 reading comprehension?
With me today. Do I have them with me today?
Yeah.
I might have the text type, but if this is a question that's unrelated to syntax, could you drop it in the chat and I will go through it later?
Okay.
Maria.
Okay. Yes, I'm going to take one more question before I move on to the next part of improving your syntax, okay?
Can we just take a screenshot of like this thing that you just
Of
wrote?
course you can. Yeah, of course you can. These are, if anybody wants a copy of this as a PDF, I will send it to Melvin and I know he'll find a way to get it to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, fantastic. So moving on, dependent clauses. Of course, there is an example there if you need it. I'm going to move on to the next thing though. You want to understand the different sentence types that you can use, okay? Now, obviously, a lot of people have asked me sentence types before, and quite simply, there is a difference between short and long sentences and simple and complex sentences, okay? So when we have simple sentences, it is when we use a subject, we add a verb, and we have a direct object, okay? The problem with simple sentences, and like I was saying before, is one, they are overused, and two, there is no possible way to write them differently than subject, verb, and direct object. There is no way you can rearrange that and still have your sentence make sense, okay? And as you can see underneath, I gave like a couple examples of how I tried to rearrange a simple sentence and how it definitely did not work. You do not want to attempt to rearrange a simple sentence, which brings me to my next point. Complex sentences are going to be your best friend when it comes to figurative language, okay? Shall I leave that part there so if people can have a chance to write it down? Yeah, okay. Okay, so complex sentences is when we have an independent clause, a dependent clause, and we use conjunctions to bring them together, okay? Now, a conjunction is basically a joining word that relates your independent clause to your dependent clause. And we have a bunch of conjunctions, okay? Conjunctions can be as simple as after, was, to, because, and. Very, very simply, they're just joining words, so don't overthink it. However, one of the things that I've noticed, and one of the joining words I'd like people to stop using is because. Because it's quite, for me, it just breaks the flow of your writing. And it doesn't show that you have an extensive, I want to say extensive vocabulary, but it's just quite too simple for what you're doing. He fell because he tripped on a rock. For me, that's too simple. I would prefer if you try to avoid using because by rearranging your sentences altogether, okay? So if you take away anything from complex sentences, is that you should avoid the conjunction because. Do not use because in your creative writing anymore. I will not be writing this in the chat purely because if I do write it in the chat, it will be right at the end of the lesson. okay? Because I have not got this written anywhere else except for my iPad, and it's all in my brain, okay?
How do
So
you screenshot?
how do you screenshot? That is a fantastic question, and I wish I knew the answer.
I'm pretty sure it's Control and V.
What do you have a tablet at
Device
all?
that you want.
It's the off button. It's the off button and the home button if you're on an iPad.
But if you're on a computer or a Mac, it's Control and V.
Look at all of you problem solving. I love that. Fantastic. But also, if you are concerned that you're missing out on anything, what you can do is just put your email in the chat at the very, very end, and I will just send it to you personally as a PDF, okay?
There we are.
Okay, I will take I'll take the 3 questions that I can see, but it has to be involved with complex, otherwise we'll break the flow of what we're doing, okay?
Can you scroll up?
Scroll up, yeah. How much up?
A little bit more higher. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to go back to complex sentences, okay? Abia, do you have a question about complex sentences? Do you have a question about complex sentences? No? Okay.
No.
Alina, do you have a question about complex sentences?
Oh, never mind. My hands.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move on then, okay? Okay, so I'm sorry to the person who asked me to scroll up. I have to scroll down now. All right, so when we are looking at complex sentences, the reason I say that they are good for figurative language is because you have the opportunity to use more than one independent clause within a complex sentence, okay? That means that you can have 2 objectives within your sentence. That means that you have the opportunity to use, like, if you think about it quite literally, you can use personification and a simile. Those are the 2 main points of your sentence, okay? And that's genuinely as simple as it gets, all right? So I did mention it before, but when it comes to sentence types, what the whole point of it is to not just use complex sentences throughout your story. You don't want to be using one type of sentence. You want to be using a variety of them and in different places. One of the interesting things about syntax is it creates effects, and I'm sure you already know that. But let's...
Mama, no.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to mute everyone because there's someone talking with that. Ooh. All right, very quickly, how do I mute everyone? Oh, got it. It's okay. I got you. We're all good. Okay, so completely lost my point. But anyways, you want to be using a variety of sentences, and like I said, certain sentences create different effects. Let's say that you are writing an action-packed scene, okay? A very your character is fighting someone, your character is running away from someone, you're trying to create suspense. You don't want to be having long, drawn-out sentences when you are trying to write an action scene. The reason for this is that it can become very, very confusing for your reader to follow along with complex sentences when you are trying to explain an action, okay? It is better to be short, to be concise, which is short and sweet, when you are in the middle of action scenes, okay?
Can you give an example of stuff getting too complicated during an action scene?
Oh, Naman, you like muted yourself as you were saying that.
Oh, can you give an example of how action scenes can get overcomplicated if you lengthen your sentences too much?
How action scenes can get overcomplicated if you lengthen your sentences too much, right? Okay, that would I can't do one off the top of my head. That would actually require me to write one down. So how can I do that for you? Give me 2 seconds to think about how I can give you an example for that is actually going to be beneficial to you. Because if I make one up and it doesn't work, it's not going to be very great. Let me think. Hold on, I do have an example somewhere. Would it be okay if I typed it out into the chat instead?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so that will be an end of lesson thing, so please wait for that. However, one of the things that, like you asked how it gets too complicated, right? It's, have you written an action story before where your character is fighting someone, or do you tend to stick away from those kind of things?
I never did
Tend
that.
to stick away.
Tend to stick
You-
away.
Okay, so you tend to stick away from it, and that's fine. But I'll give you an example. So if your character is in the middle of a sword fight, right? Some people will tend to, and it's not everyone, okay? Different people write in different ways. Everybody's syntax is different, okay? But an example would be if you're in the middle of a sword fight. Now, some people would just use sound, like say there was a crack against shield, right? If I was to say there was a crack against shield, that would imply that someone has hit my shield with a sword, okay? But it gets overcomplicated when you start adding additional information beyond that. There was a crack against the shield as a sword hit down upon it. You don't need to add the additional part of the sentence because it's already implied at the beginning. But I understand that as I explain it, it can get a little bit confusing. I will write down a proper example for you at the bottom. So do not stress too much about that. Does anybody have any questions related to complex sentences that I can answer for them right now before we move on to voice?
No questions.
Okay, fine. If we're done with complex and we're all waiting for that example, I'm going to move on. Okay.
Maria,
Yes, Shri.
can you just repeat the end of that, because my ears, your voice went like a little bit wrong. I couldn't hear it.
Which part do you need me to repeat? I know that seems like a silly question if you missed out on
Just
it, but
like
where
the
did you?
The end.
Of the example?
Yeah.
Oh goodness, okay, so I'm so sorry, I've already forgotten what I've said in terms of that example. I will just write down a proper one at the end of class, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, fantastic.
Wait,
Moving
you said
on.
something about swords and shields.
Maria?
Hold on.
Can you spell?
Yes. Is that okay? Okay, I did mention the sword and the shield. I think what I did say was that to keep it uncomplicated, you would have a very simple sentence such as there was a crack against her shield, okay? That would imply that something hit the shield. It does not then need to be said there was a crack against her shield as a sword hit against it. That additional, the end part of that, is what takes away from the effect, is what takes away from the dramatic action, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, fantastic. Is that okay in terms of the seeing it?
Yes.
No, sorry, someone asked whether I could scroll up. Anyways, I'm gonna move on to active voice. I am not sure, and I hope you've heard of active and passive voice before. But what we want to be doing when we write is using an active voice. Now, an active voice is, well, I'll start off with a passive voice because that is what you don't want to be doing. A passive voice is when the subject receives an action, okay? So when the subject of your sentence receives an action. I'll give you an example. And unfortunately, these examples are not down on the document. So if you need to write these down, please feel free to. So example of a passive voice would be, the dog was walked by the human, okay? The dog was walked by the human is an example of passive voice. Now, the reason this is weak is because, well, there are much better ways to put this. There are better ways of writing the sentence is why we are avoiding it, okay? The dog was walked by the human. Sorry, can I just mute everyone very quickly because there's a little bit of feedback on my end.
Maria,
Yes.
can you just repeat that sentence again?
Yes, so an example of passive voice is that the dog was walked by the human.
Maria,
Yes.
I want to tell you something. Your handwriting is very neat.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, back to passive voice. I want everyone to avoid passive voice when they are writing for creative writing, okay? It's a no-no. It's just a big, big no-no, all right? So passive voice is a no-no. Active voice is what we want to be aiming for when we are doing any kind of creative writing. Active voice, and why I love active voice, is it's because it's orderly. Everything is organized in your sentence perfectly when you use active voice. It does not leave room for confusion, all right? So an example of active voice, which is going to follow on in terms of changing the passive voice example I gave you, would be the human walked the dog. The human walked the dog. Okay, I hope everybody got that down. Now, I know it doesn't sound so super fantastic when you have
Maria,
yes.
How do you emphasize on very straightforward things?
What do you mean by that?
Like, say a guy woke up and he was going to brush his teeth. How would you emphasize that? Or
when you say
like that?
When you say emphasize, would you say how I would write that? Is that what you're trying to ask me? How I myself would write that?
No, mainly just like adjectives you would include in such simple situations. Or what type of strategy you would use to make it more complex.
Right. So what you would actually doing, and this isn't wrong to do. So when we have those simple situations, right, they actually can be made into very interesting stories. What we call them are stories that are focused on the minutia of life, okay? And the minutia, basically, the minutia just means the small, precise, trivial details of something. Like brushing your teeth in the morning, I would consider that to be a part of the minutia of life. How I would emphasize that through adjectives in a complex sentence, not that I'm going to be able to pull one together out of my hat right now, but I would talk about the motions that are being used. Like, are you doing circular motions when you brush your teeth? Are you trying to achieve pearly whites? What are you trying to do? What is your purpose of including this? How we make sentences interesting is we first decide what the purpose of it is. Why are you brushing your teeth in the morning? Is it because you have a sick, disgusting taste that sits in the back of your throat and makes everything taste like death? Is that what you're trying to get rid of? That's how I make my sentence interesting. I first decide the purpose of my sentence, and then I choose my adjectives.
So you make your sentence interesting by deciding how it affects the plot.
Pretty much, yes. So I decide the purpose of why I've chosen to include that sentence, and then I pick my adjectives after that. And that has to do with complex sentences because it would include all the adjectives and independent clauses mostly. Does anybody have any questions about the minutiae of life kind of stories? I know that would kind of take us on a bit of a tangent with complex sentences, but they can be achieved. When you are writing, I know that there is a big push to write interesting stories, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that writing about trivial details in life, like going to get your first pair of Jordans or let me pick a more relatable shoe. You're getting your first pair of Converse. That doesn't mean that that story in itself is going to be boring. Okay, it's just how we execute it and write about it. Moving on, unless anybody has questions about minutiae of life stories. No? Okay. Are we happy for me to move on from that spot where I was?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, fantastic. Active voice, great. There are examples which you are more than welcome to write down, but the purpose of what I would like you to remember about active voice and why we use it is because it keeps our sentences organized. It does not leave room for confusion, okay? So the benefits of active voice as seen below, it is more impacting. There are opportunities for action verbs. It is useful for creating imagery. Okay, active voice is fantastic for imagery. Like I said, with the complex sentences for figurative language, active voice would be great for imagery. Right, now, I am not sure if anybody struggles with this because I haven't actually had the opportunity of reading all of your stories yet. But one of the things that I find that I read with other year 5s is, and year 6s, is that they struggle to move their plot along. So let's say you have a fantastic idea and you're writing about it and suddenly you don't know where to go from there. Unfortunately, the solution that people come up with is to have a big time jump. They either go, and then we went home. Okay, I apologize. I did not realize there was a range of students in here. I only mentioned year 5s and year 6s. Someone just commented they were in year 7. Unfortunately, I also see this with some of my uni friends as well. And my year 12s and year 11s will write like this, which is why I'm bringing it up. If we can solve this problem now, you will not struggle with it later on in life, okay? Thank you everyone for telling me what grade you are. It's actually very adorable that there are a lot of different age groups in here. Okay, so anyways, people tend to jump to a different part of their plot by saying, and then we went home, or, and then I woke up. A moment later, an hour later. It's, has anybody watched SpongeBob, where they hold up that big sign and it goes a few moments later?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. You want to be avoiding having moments like that in your stories. They stop the plot and they stop what you are trying to achieve with your writing, okay? So the best advice I can give you when it comes to avoiding plot jumps in terms of like jumping from one event to another by saying, and then time passed, would be to practice using active voice from your final sentence, moving on to your next idea. And there is an example story that we are going to go through today. Oh, and yes, we have such good time for that as well. So there is a story that we are going to go through today, and I will show you what has been done to move the plot along without going a few moments later, okay? Based on active voice, does anybody have questions?
Can
about...
you use it?
Sorry?
Can you use it in a sentence?
How to use active voice in a sentence?
Yeah.
Okay, well, active voice is a term. I can give you an example, another example of active voice.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, fantastic. A very simple one would be, a passive voice would be the squirrel ran away as the dog chased it. An example of active voice would be the dog bounded after the squirrel.
Okay, thanks.
All good.
Maria, can you
Yes.
just say the definition of active voice again so I can write it down?
Awesome. It is also on the thing, but active voice is when your subject is carrying out the action. Okay, so they're actually committing to the action. Whatever action they are doing, they are the focus of it. Does that make sense?
Not really.
Okay, so when we have, like I said, with passive voice, the squirrel ran away as the dog was chasing it, right? We start off with what's actually happened, with what has already happened. The squirrel is running away as the dog is chasing it. Chasing, right? Actually, why don't you write this down? The squirrel ran away as the dog was chasing it, and tell me where the verbs are. Okay, now, once we have that down, once we have the example down for passive voice, I'd like you to get the example down for active voice. And the reason I'm doing this is just to solidify the definition with you guys, okay? Now, the example I have for passive voice, oh goodness, what was it? The dog bounded after the squirrel. The dog bounded after the squirrel. Yes, so you're all getting the verbs, fantastic. The dog bounded after the squirrel. Now, this is an example of active voice because it's making the dog the subject who is carrying out the action, okay? So the action is bounded, right? Bounding, bounded. Have you ever seen a dog run in a very aggressive way towards something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, bounded. That is what we're talking about there. That is the action. The dog is the subject.
Could you repeat the passive and the active voice just one more time?
Yeah. So what I can actually do is I'll put those two examples down in the chat right now so that everybody has it and we can solidify that. All right, give me 2 seconds to write it down, okay?
There's background noises.
Thank you for letting me know. I'll mute everyone. Hold on. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, no, it's all good now. Okay, so the passive example and the active example are now in the chat, if anybody was confused about that. Okay, great. So notice how dog and bounded are next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry. Sometimes I think I'm expecting a response, and I say you don't actually have to respond. That is making the subject, which is the dog, sorry, not making him, but the dog is now carrying out the action, which is bounded. So he's going after the squirrel. But in the other one, okay, the subject is the dog, and he is right at the end of the sentence. So he's right at the end of the sentence. Does anybody have a question about passive voice in itself? Because I understand that we didn't really go into too much detail on that. And why we should avoid it. Okay, yeah. What is your question?
If we do write it in our stories and stuff, does that lower our marks to something?
Well, that's a very I can't give you a definitive answer on that because it would depend on what you wrote. You might have exquisite vocabulary and write a passive sentence, and what would happen is that they'd go, okay, fantastic, his vocabulary is phenomenal, he's writing well above his year level, but what he needs to focus on is actually making sure his sentences are in she, so sorry. Yeah, I know I was using this example, so sorry. Is actually making sure the things that are happening within the sentence are in the correct order. Okay. So there are more than one thing is going to take away from your mark. Does that make sense? Just because you write a sentence, that it wouldn't completely lower your mark if you have exquisite vocabulary within it. The point of it is to just avoid it, okay? You don't want to go in and have amazing vocabulary, but mess your sentences up by using the wrong type of voice. Okay. The final part, and I did talk about this before, is improving your syntax. You want to know which part of your story you are focusing on when you are writing, okay? Like I said, short, sharp sentences during action, but also when you are describing setting and talking about setting, and we have touched on quite a lot of setting in the past 2 lessons, it would be a good idea to use complex sentences or longer, well drawn out sentences. I tend to use a lot of commas, and it really, really exaggerate and draw out my settings. That's just how I normally write. It doesn't mean you have to, but it would be a good idea to make sure that you know the difference. Action, short, sharp, and sweet. Setting, long and drawn out. All right, that is pretty much it on the tips I have for improving your syntax and what to focus on when you are practicing writing. Are we all happy to move on to the activity I have?
Yes.
Great, because I'm gonna have
Yes.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to shift the page. So if anybody missed out on anything, you can let me know right at the end, and I will scroll down to it when I'm writing my examples in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay. So we've already touched on a couple of things to do with figurative language. Now, I'm going to breeze through this because I'm sure you've heard it many, many, many times before. Figurative language is language that goes beyond the literal meaning to make a point, okay? Why do we use figurative language? We use it because it brings our audience into the experience, okay? They can see what we can see, they can feel what we can see, and it also helps them to understand our story way more than they did without it, okay? So understanding of the events happening increases when we use figurative language. Okay, we know about metaphors, similes, personification. I haven't gone through alliteration with you guys, but if anybody has questions about alliteration, please let me know. Okay, I'm assuming not.
Can you go up?
Here. Very quickly. The two that I'm not sure whether you guys have touched on very much are hyperbole and illusion. Yep. Can I just finish saying this and we'll go into detail in a second? Hyperboles and illusions. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on illusions? Has anybody not heard about illusions before or hyperboles? Because I know that they're not really the two most common parts of figurative language.
I don't know hyperboles.
Okay, fantastic. So there were a lot of answers there, and I'm assuming that I'm just going to go.
I'm not sure about an illusion.
Okay, so do not worry.
I don't know.
I'm going to go through them right now. So that was my fault for asking everyone at the same time. I should have just gone through it because, well, I knew they were uncommon, but they're very simple to get. And if I would recommend that you write these 2 definitions down after I scroll through it. If people are writing down the definitions, you might as well ask for the PDF to be sent to you at the end of the lesson because I don't know, it's going to take away from actually understanding the activity we're going to do. So illusion. Yes, before I get into my example, what's the question?
Can you scroll down?
I will scroll down in 10 to 15 seconds, okay?
Okay. Inika, up and the mic turn on.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Okay, fantastic. Anyways, so an illusion is when we refer to an external text in our own text. That might sound very weird, but it is very simply writing about a story and maybe making reference to the Bible. Or another example, and one that I have written below, is everybody knows Superman. I'm assuming you all know Superman. One of the things that Superman does when something bad happens is he runs into a phone booth, he takes off his fake glasses, and he rips open his shirt. That's his thing. He hides his identity by wearing glasses and running off into alleys to go change. If by any chance your character is not who they say they are, you have written maybe a spy character, something really interesting, you can talk about how they how hiding their secret identity wouldn't be as easy as wearing a pair of glasses. Now that is an allusion to Superman. We don't actually ever say Superman, but we mention something that everyone knows he does, which is wear a pair of fake glasses to hide his true identity. Have I confused people? And please write your answer in the chat so there aren't like 60 people yelling no at me. So yeah, an allusion is when we refer to an external text in our own text. It is very, very simple. The next one is a hyperbole, and that is an extreme exaggeration, okay? And I'll get into that to a sec. Did you have a question?
It wasn't related to this, but could you send the PDF to Melvin so you can put it in the WhatsApp group?
Yes, I can. I will do that immediately after the lesson. Anyways, okay, so moving on. Hyperboles are just an exaggeration. An example I have there is, I am so hungry I could eat a mammoth. Okay. Abia, you have a question? No? Yes, maybe? Okay. I'm assuming not.
Maria, can you scroll up a bit? I was writing the things down.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Thanks
so I'll just go through the common, that's okay. I'll just go through some common questions I get asked when it comes to figurative language. I get asked a lot whether imagery is a part of figurative language. How I want you to understand it is I want you to understand the elements of figurative language, which is your metaphor, simile, personification, alliteration, onomatopoeia, allusion, and hyperbole in this case. I want you to imagine them as the ingredients, and I want you to see imagery as your finished product. So whatever those ingredients combine to make is usually imagery, okay? That's just a common question I get asked a lot. Nanan, do you have a question?
Wait, what is that type of literary technique called when you assume that everyone knows something?
When you assume everyone knows something. When you assume everyone knows something. Give me 2 seconds. When everyone knows something.
I've got an example from one of my
Yeah,
school
yeah,
books,
yeah.
but I don't know what it's called. It's like so the mom's telling the child to change his clothes, and he's like, "I'm not Superman."
Oh, that would be I would actually consider that more of an illusion, because they've mentioned Superman, and it's obviously implied that he has superhuman speed, right?
No, I mean,
No?
it's not not thinking of the plot. Like, he's just an ordinary kid. He's just exaggerating that he